Just like Dad wanted, I brought our maid with us. Huh? For a moment, I couldn't believe my ears. Edgar, in front of his father, had a smug attitude, referring to me as a maid. Then, my stepfather, staring intently at my face, suddenly burst out laughing. "What's going on?" I asked, to which his father, trying to suppress his laughter, said, "Well, it's just. When you said Edgar's fiance, I wondered what kind of woman she'd be. And here we have, a face of poverty. Makes me want to see her parents." Hearing this, Amy, couldn't hold back my tears out of frustration and ran away from the scene. Luckily, there was a women's restroom for guests in the party room. I hid there as if running for cover and called my dad. After I explained the situation, my dad came to help right away. "Hello, I'm the maid's father." "You are?" Upon realizing who my father was, his father and Edgar started to panic. And then, they ended up facing retribution from my father and another helper who showed up later. "My name is Amy, and I work as a salesperson in a department store. At 40, I'm still single. But, I am currently seeing someone. His name is Edgar, 5 years my junior at 35. Edgar is the son of the owner of a music store located within the department store where I work. Dating the boss's son can attract unwanted attention. That's why I've kept my relationship with Edgar a secret at work to avoid awkward social situations. We mainly communicate through messages. I always look forward to checking my phone for messages from Edgar during breaks. Today, I checked my phone to find a message from him, suggesting we go out on our day off. Our relationship was still fresh, and spending time together felt new and exciting. Edgar's family, owning a music store, had a piano worth $2 million. Edgar has been playing the piano since he was a child. "I want you to see our family's piano. Then, I'll play something for you." "That sounds lovely. I'd love to hear you play." Edgar is a genuinely well-mannered and calm person. I really enjoy spending time with him. Considering our ages, of course, marriage is on the table. So, when Edgar messaged me about going on a date. However, I had to decline that day because my mom was coming over from home. "I'm sorry, but I have to stay home because my mom is visiting that day." Then, 10 minutes later, Edgar replied, "Your mom is coming over? I'd like to meet her if possible." After thinking it over for a bit, since we were considering marriage, meeting the parents seemed like a good step. So, I quickly agreed. "That sounds like a plan. I was thinking of introducing you to her eventually. I'll pick you up in the morning then." "Really? That's great. I'm looking forward to it." Edgar was happy about the chance to meet my mom. However, introducing Edgar to my mom somehow began to cast a shadow over our relationship. And on the day I was to introduce Edgar to my mom, I went to the nearest station early in the morning to pick up Edgar. Since my mom came by car today, there was no space for Edgar to park if he drove. Besides, if we got along well, we thought we might as well have a drink together. So, Edgar took the train today. Emerging from the station's gates, Edgar was dressed in a brand new jacket. Seemingly nervous. I tried to ease Edgar's nerves with a cheerful voice. "Good morning, Edgar. What's up with you, looking so tense?" "Good morning. I guess I'm just nervous about meeting your parents." Edgar's face was stiff, and his voice was tense. "Don't worry. My mom's very approachable," I said, and Edgar gradually relaxed. When we entered my apartment, my mom greeted Edgar with a smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm dating Amy. My name is Edgar West." "West?" As soon as Edgar introduced himself, the smile disappeared from my mom's face. I realized I had only told my mom Edgar's first name. But why did my mom react strangely to Edgar's last name? "Mom, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. Nice to meet you, Edgar. I'm Amy's mother. Thank you for always being there for Amy." My mom greeted him with a forced smile. Even after inviting Edgar to the living room, there was a tense atmosphere. My mom, with her back turned, asked Edgar, "What do you do for a living?" "I help run my dad's company. We manage 5 music stores in this area. The music store in Amy's department store is one of them," Edgar confidently replied. It seemed like Edgar was finally back to his usual self. However, my mom didn't seem interested in Edgar's story. Trying to make a connection, I asked my mom, Don't you think there's some connection between Edgar's company and us? Well, yes, I suppose. My mom responded indifferently. Edgar, probably because of his nerves, didn't notice my mom's cold attitude. A connection? I haven't told you yet, but my mom is a violinist who graduated from a conservatory and now runs a violin school at her house. Really? Then, there does seem to be a connection between us, Edgar replied, his eyes shining. I was about to mention my dad too, but I stopped as I felt my mom's mood darken further. What bothered me more was how my mom kept scrutinizing Edgar's face, furrowing her brows. Even Edgar, despite his nerves, began to notice my mom's suspicious looks. Just as I was about to change the subject, my mom turned to Edgar and said, "I'm sorry, but could you leave for today?" What? But he just got here. I exclaimed in surprise, but Edgar seemed uncomfortable too. As Edgar stood up slowly, he said, "I understand. Sorry for intruding on your family time." Though Edgar said that, he looked upset. I intended to walk him to the station, but was stopped at the door. "It's okay. I'll go back alone." "Edgar, I'm really sorry," I apologized, but Edgar didn't look back as he left our home. What didn't my mom like about him? I was curious and immediately went back to the living room. "Mom, what's the matter? What didn't you like about him?" I pressed my mom, who was cleaning up in the kitchen. She turned around slowly and looked at me solemnly. "I think Edgar is a good person." "Then why?" I started to ask, but my mom, looking more serious, whispered, "Because you've decided on him, I didn't want to say too much. But honestly, I can't agree with this marriage." "Why? Because I'm 5 years older?" "No, that's not it." My mom calmed me down. "Can you listen to what I have to say till the end?" "It might be hard for you," my mom said, so I sat down on the living room sofa. Then, she explained why she couldn't agree with my marriage in detail. I listened silently, feeling conflicted as the reasons were beyond my expectations. I understood why my mom couldn't agree. But it didn't change my feelings about wanting to marry Edgar. "I understand how you feel, Mom. But I don't dislike Edgar himself. It's something unrelated to him. That's why I want to see for myself," I said, meaning I would also meet Edgar's parents. My mom looked at me worriedly and said, "I'm worried and don't really want you to go. But if you're that determined, I can't stop you. I trust you, so do your best." "Thank you, Mom." And so, I begged Edgar to let me meet his parents. Edgar seemed to have been planning on it, as he smiled happily. "Really? Man, I thought I was definitely disliked when I met Amy's mom last time," Edgar said, then pulled something out of his pocket. It was an engagement ring. "Before anything else, let's make it official. Will you marry me?" Blushing at the sudden proposal. I had been waiting for this moment from Edgar, and without hesitation, I said yes. Then, the day came for us to visit Edgar's house. Today, I was the one who was nervous, stiff as a board. Edgar picked me up in the morning with a big, happy smile. "Don't be so nervous. My dad's very friendly." "Yeah." Actually, Edgar's mom wasn't around, and it was just him and his dad. I was prepared to help out around their all-male household. But when we arrived at Edgar's house, I was taken aback. It was my first time visiting Edgar's house, and it was much larger than I had imagined. I knew his dad was a CEO, but I hadn't expected them to be so wealthy. There was a large, mansion-like gate in front of the house, like something out of a movie. Inside, we were shown the infamous $2 million piano, located in a spacious party room. "Wow. It's like you could have a dinner show right here in your house." "Right? We often host parties here for our clients. Actually, we're planning to have a party tomorrow with a famous pianist." "A famous pianist?" I was startled by Edgar's story, and just as I asked about it, a man in his early 60s, looking every bit the wealthy individual, appeared before me. "Welcome. I'm Edgar's father." "Nice to meet you." "I'm Amy," I said to my father-in-law. Then, Edgar, more excited than I've ever seen him, said, "Amy, don't be so formal." He seemed to be trying to ease my tension, but it felt off, somehow different than usual. Suddenly, Edgar, in front of his father, said something unbelievable. "Just like Dad wanted, I brought our maid with us." "Huh?" I couldn't believe my ears. Edgar, who had always shown me respect for being older, was now arrogantly calling me a maid in front of his father. This is great. Our household has been all male for so long, having a maid would really help. His father joined in. My father-in-law was staring intently at my face. Then suddenly burst out laughing. What's going on? I asked. Well, it's just. When you said Edgar's fiance, I wondered what kind of woman she'd be. And here we have a face of poverty. Makes me want to see your parents. He said, trying to suppress his laughter. This joke was too much. I looked to Edgar for help, but he was just smirking. Come on, Dad. It's not about the face. Besides, if she's a maid, we'd want someone older who can work hard, right? Oh, and Amy's mom was beautiful, so maybe she takes after her dad? What's that supposed to mean? Edgar, are you mocking me too? I was in a panic, shocked by this unexpected turn. The kind Edgar I knew. It was hard to believe he could change so much at home. As I glared at Edgar with a frustrated expression, his father asked me. Oh, your mother is beautiful? That'll be interesting to meet. By the way, what does Amy's father do? Actually, I haven't asked that yet. Both father and son looked down on me. I didn't want to share anything about my dad with these people. My dad, well, he's always busy, traveling around for work. Edgar retorted with a smirk. Oh? So, your mom teaches some instrument, and your dad's out earning money everywhere? Sounds like they're always busy with no rest. So, if they're that busy, they must be struggling. Finally, this father and son were looking down not just on me, but on my whole family. Frustrated to tears, I ran away from the room. Fortunately, there was a women's restroom for guests in the party room. Hiding there, I called my dad. Knowing he was nearby due to work. Hey, Dad. Hey, Amy? What's up, calling in the middle of the day? Dad answered cheerfully. Despite his job taking him all over the world. Hearing my dad's voice after so long, I couldn't stop my tears. Dad. Through my tears, Dad gently spoke. Sounds like something tough happened. Take your time and tell me about it. Grateful for his kindness, I told him everything that had happened. I don't care what they say about me, but to speak so horribly about my family. I was so frustrated. After I finished, Dad responded seriously. All right, stay there. I'm on my way over now. Really? What about your work? When it comes to my daughter's crisis, work can always wait. Don't worry. Knowing Dad was coming made me feel a bit better. Thanks, Dad. You know how to get to the place, right? Yeah, of course, Dad said before hanging up. Wiping away my tears, I went back to where Edgar and his dad were chatting happily. Amy. You're back. Thought you might have left already. Unfortunately for you. Since your father was so keen on seeing my parents, I've called mine here as you wished. At my words, my father-in-law smirked and said, calling someone out in the middle of the day and they can come right away? Must be a pretty free job he's got there. Like father, like daughter, huh? This is gonna be fun. Edgar and his dad laughed mockingly. But their taunts didn't scare me anymore. Once they saw my dad, they'd be in for a shock. About 10 minutes later, Dad arrived. Edgar, who went to greet him at the door, came back looking astonished. Is that guy really Amy's dad? He's like a total celebrity. I looked towards the entrance where my dad was waiting. Indeed, he was dressed in a fancy formal suit. Probably rehearsing for tomorrow. However, my father-in-law refused to believe Edgar, retorting. Why so surprised, Edgar? It's common for fathers to try to impress when visiting their daughter's fiance's house. He must have borrowed the suit from somewhere. What are you talking about, Dad? He arrived in a luxury car that's hard to come by here. Who would just lend out something like that? At Edgar's words, my father-in-law's face tensed up, frowning. Then Dad appeared and greeted him. Hello, the maid's father here. Seeing my dad, my father-in-law dropped his wine glass in shock. You are? He stared at Dad, visibly surprised. Dad looked around the spacious house and said, Oh my, such a big house and yet, no staff? And you're having Amy, your son's fiancée, work as a maid? No. That's absolutely not the case. My father-in-law denied, waving his hands. Oh? Was the story I heard from Amy over the phone a misunderstanding? She mentioned something about being called poor-faced, resembling her father. No, that's... Sweating, my father-in-law struggled to respond. Edgar, sensing the gravity of the situation, asked nervously. Dad, what's going on? Who is this man? Hey! Watch your mouth! This gentleman is Roy Jones, the famous pianist who will perform at our important party tomorrow. At his father's words, Edgar was just as shocked. Really? Hey, Amy! Why didn't you tell me? I was just as surprised when Edgar mentioned a famous pianist coming over. I knew my dad was playing at a party tomorrow, but I had no idea it was here. Edgar shook his head. That's not what I'm asking. Why didn't you tell me your dad is Roy? Well, you're always talking about yourself, Edgar. There was never a chance for me to talk about my own things. Indeed, Edgar always managed to turn conversations back to himself. Besides, after how you mocked me earlier, I really wasn't in the mood to talk about my dad. Come on, you've been blaming others the whole time since then. Edgar was clearly playing the victim, getting all defensive. Then, his father also snapped at me. You know, Amy, Edgar's right. Even if you are the daughter of a famous pianist, isn't it common sense to disclose your parents' occupations before coming to your fiance's house? Thinking about it, maybe he had a point. I was at a loss for words, not sure how to respond. That's when my dad stepped in to help. Well, that might be true. But then, are you saying that if Amy wasn't my daughter, you intended to treat her as a maid as you were suggesting? My dad wasn't backing down either. My father-in-law was left speechless by his question. Seeing his puzzled face, my dad laughed and said, Well, regardless of intentions, it's clear as day that marrying into this house means getting all the chores dumped on you. And what do you mean by that? After looking around the house, my dad added, I've heard rumors that any maid who enters this house quits soon after. They say it's because the master is difficult to work with, and the son here tries to charm every young maid. Looking around, it was obvious there wasn't a single maid or servant in such a large estate. While the party room was cleaned, perhaps in preparation for tomorrow, the rest of the house was quite dirty upon closer inspection. I looked into Edgar's face, trying to reaffirm his feelings. Edgar, did you really decide to marry me with the intention of making me a maid? I loved you genuinely. Edgar just hung his head in silence but eventually muttered. I had no choice. No choice? Does that mean, as long as someone could be the maid, it didn't have to be me? Edgar couldn't meet my eyes. Seeing this, my dad sternly said, So, you didn't love Amy after all. In that case, we'll call off this engagement. Wait, what? No, just hold on a minute. Edgar protested, but my dad seemed determined. There's no need to wait. Furthermore, under these circumstances, I'll be withdrawing from tomorrow's performance. What? But that's a completely different issue. What will I say to our important clients if you don't perform tomorrow? My father-in-law began to panic. That's none of my concern. If you need a pianist, have your son play. I've heard he's quite skilled. My son's piano playing is not something we can present to our high-class guests. Please, I understand you're upset about your son, but... My father-in-law pleaded, bowing deeply. Looking down at my father-in-law, Edgar exclaimed, Dad! Stop making me out to be the bad guy. It's all your fault to begin with. You drove Mom away by overworking her and did the same to every maid by making impossible demands. Shut up. If we lose tomorrow's guests, our business is finished. They argued when a loud sound came from the back. You're right, Edgar. You're the worst for making your wife suffer, my mom emerged, scolding him. Oh, you were here? I came as soon as I got the call from your dad. It was easy to sneak in since there's no gatekeeper. Apparently, Dad had contacted Mom right after my call. Mom glared fiercely at my father-in-law, who was clearly shocked by her presence. You are... Ah, you remember me. You overworked and tried to discard my best friend. It's been a while since I last came here to confront you. I knew after introducing Edgar to my mom. The mother-in-law he pushed away was Mom's best friend from college. That's why Mom opposed me marrying into this family. Mom stared down at my father-in-law with a formidable look. After you drove her out, she came to me. She joined the same orchestra and continued playing the violin, excelling in her studies. Now, she works at the violin school I run. She's doing that? You haven't changed at all, treating your plain-looking ex-wife like a servant, never appreciating her true worth. Trying to justify himself, my father-in-law stumbled over his words. Yes, I knew she graduated from a conservatory. But once she married into our family, she had to follow our ways. I was astounded by his lame excuse. Turning a house where no servant would stay into a mess. It's no wonder any good wife would want to leave. Especially when the owner of a music store, of all people, tries to waste the talent of an excellent violinist. Really, what does the family think a wife is? Just so you know, even though Amy didn't pursue a career in music, it was because she had her own solid beliefs and independence. She always chased her own potential, without needing to follow the path laid out by her parents. Dad nodded deeply to Mom's statement. I was so happy to know my parents understood me. Feeling lonely because my parents were always touring separately for their music, I used to throw tantrums about not wanting to be like them when I was a student. Now, it feels like it was just rebellion. But my parents always believed in me and watched over me. Realizing how they felt made me burst into tears. My father-in-law had nothing to say in response to my mom's words. Next to him, Edgar started crying, kneeling down. I've had enough. I don't need a wife, just let her go back. It's all Dad's fault anyway, not mine, right? Edgar seemed eager to end the conversation. But my father-in-law wasn't ready to give up, telling Edgar. Edgar, what are you talking about now? If you and Amy's marriage falls through, tomorrow's reception will be ruined. Instead of worrying about that, why don't you ask him to play the piano tomorrow? Dad looked exasperated at my father-in-law, still focused only on protecting his company. Even now, you're still only thinking about your own gains. I was considering performing tomorrow if I saw any sign of remorse from you. But now, I firmly refuse. What? No way! My father-in-law was visibly disappointed by his own grave mistake. Mom then added insult to injury. You haven't even paid alimony to your ex-wife yet, have you? She's struggled for 30 years since the divorce. So, you'll be paying her the alimony she's due, including for all her hardships. My father-in-law turned pale. Now that tomorrow's plans are ruined and our company is doomed, on top of having to pay alimony to my ex-wife, this is too much. Oh, that's not all, my mom said, turning her sly smile towards Edgar. Look here, you good-for-nothing son. Me? Edgar looked around cluelessly. Who else would it be? Even though the engagement wasn't official yet, you've deeply hurt Amy's heart, so you owe her compensation. Well, all the family's finances are managed by my dad, so please ask him for the compensation. Edgar proved to be just the clueless son my mom accused him of being. But my father-in-law was vehemently shaking his head in refusal. Edgar, I don't know anything about that. You handle your own compensation. That's impossible. After all, this whole mess is Dad's fault. The pathetic argument between the father and son continued. We couldn't help but laugh loudly at the spectacle. Glad to have discovered the true nature of this family before getting married. I felt immensely grateful to my parents for their support. The next day, the family still went ahead with the party for their clients. However, without my dad's piano performance, the guests were all upset and left early. Losing their important clients, the management took a turn for the worse. The father's reputation had been bad even before, and the company had been barely surviving thanks to the support of these clients. Losing its main pillar, bankruptcy became inevitable. Since they had a store in the department store where I worked, I couldn't avoid hearing about it. Soon after, the business went bankrupt. But our dealings didn't end there. Edgar and his father refused to pay the compensation my mom and I demanded, leading us to sue them. In court, my father-in-law even tried to sue my dad for canceling the job on personal grounds. But my dad accepted the lawsuit gracefully. I regret canceling the job for personal reasons. I'll pay the compensation. So, please also proceed with the compensation payment on your end. Now I know. By accepting their lawsuit, it became harder for my father-in-law to refuse ours. Reluctantly, he paid the alimony to his ex-wife and I received compensation from Edgar. Afterwards, Edgar and his father, having lost everything, including their house and the $2 million piano, vanished into obscurity. After losing everything, the two of them seemed to have disappeared without a trace. There were sightings of Edgar and his father at a hotel party venue sometime later, according to someone. However, They were both working as cleaners in the middle of the night when no one was around. This incident made me decide to change my ways. I used to reject the notion when people said it must be nice to have such accomplished parents. I took pride in leaving home and being independent. But now, I realize what truly makes me proud is having wonderful parents. Realizing this, I decided to attend my father's concerts, something I had never done before. Today is my father's birthday concert. I came to watch his performance with my mom. It's been a while since I last heard my father play the piano live, and it warmed my heart. Having such a wonderful father, I feel truly blessed. My mom also seemed to enjoy his music, listening contentedly. It was a very peaceful time. I'm so glad to have been born to these parents. From now on, I'll do my best to show them appreciation in ways I haven't before. Listening to my father's music, I made that promise to myself.